In the UK, boxing fans are really raving about this August 3rd card, but in the US, it's garnered far more of a mixed reception. So you can see this guy put up the fight poster on his Instagram page. I believe he's a boxing journalist out of Mexico, Guadalajara. And if you look at the comments, this one here says, only Pitbull and Rayo are really the ones worth watching. Next one says, the main fight is a straight up cherry-picked fight. This one here says, Pitbull fight should be the main event. This guy says the card is mid. This guy says the card fell apart bad like always. This guy says this is an example of fighters not fighting each other. This guy calls the card trash. Here we got a guy complaining about the fact that they couldn't get Virgil Ortiz a replacement opponent 4 months out when Tim Tszyu withdrew. This guy says the main event is Crawford, who is fighting a guy that won a belt against a non-champion, has only 11 pro fights, and hasn't yet defended his belt. It's okay when Dud Crawford does it, but it would be a major problem if Canelo did it. The hypocrisy. Next guy says UFC card still better than. Somebody here complaining about the price of the tickets. Another person as well saying it only costs a liver and a kidney to go. So you get the picture. Now there are people praising the card in the comments on this post, but the majority of comments that have a lot of likes are the ones criticizing the card. Now you could say that these people are just casuals, but casuals are where all the money comes from, folks. How do you think Floyd Mayweather sold so many pay-per-views? Well, you think it was all hardcores? No, it was predominantly casuals. Casuals outnumber hardcores by a big amount. So of course casuals say silly things, but their dollars matter. That's the bottom line. And if their perception is that this card is rubbish or mid at best, that's not a good look. Now, this card is in LA. California has a very large Latino, particularly Mexican population. And there's a number of Mexican fighters on the card, such as Isaac Cruz and Andy Ruiz. But of course, Virgil Ortiz was supposed to be on the card too against Tim Tszyu. If that fight had remained on there, I think it would have made a big difference to the way this card is being received in the United States. I think there'd be a lot more enthusiasm for it than there is. Not that there isn't any enthusiasm, I'm just saying there'd be a lot more if Ortiz versus Tim Tszyu was still going ahead on his show. And I think one of those commenters there did ask a valid question. Why didn't they get Virgil Ortiz a replacement opponent? They had plenty of time. That would have been the smart thing to do. I don't know why they couldn't get that worked out. Now, obviously, a lot of these people criticizing are Canelo fans, and they want to trash the card because Terence Crawford is now apparently a rival of Canelo Alvarez. And look, I've criticized Canelo in the past. I've also criticized Bud Crawford in the past. So I've got no issue criticizing either of these guys. But if we're going to be objective about it, this card is way better than most Canelo cards. That's a fact. Most Canelo cards are pretty damn garbage. You got Canelo fighting in the main event, and that's often hit and miss. He has given us some great main events over the years, of course, but occasionally he's given us some not so great main events as well against cherry-picked opposition. But the undercards for Canelo fights are usually very, very poor. Not always, but usually. This is a much better undercard than I've seen for a Canelo fight, perhaps ever. And as far as the main event, people saying it's trash. Madrimov is unproven as a professional, I'll say that, but Crawford is stepping up to a new weight class. Is he supposed to just dive straight in with the best? Has Canelo always done that? How come Canelo's not fighting his mandatory challengers, David Benavidez and David Morrell, at 168? I'm just trying to be fair here, guys. I criticized Terence Crawford for not fighting Boots Ennis, and so I'm also criticizing Canelo for not fighting Benavidez and Morrell. Fair is fair. Anyway, on the ticket prices for this Crawford Madrimov show, I hope they can come down in future. The more control the Saudis have over professional boxing, the more subscribers to whichever broadcaster it is, be it ESPN Plus or DAZN, all the money people involved need to understand that boxing isn't going to work as a sport reserved for high earners. This isn't golf. People talk about Floyd Mayweather and the great numbers that he did on pay-per-view. Yeah, didn't do such great numbers in the arena for a lot of his fights because the tickets were so extortionately priced. And Mayweather did very, very well for himself, but he didn't do very well for boxing. Boxing actually suffered under Floyd Mayweather because his fights were so often anticlimactic. He'd worked out an incredible business model, if you want to describe it that way, where he would antagonize the supporters cards of predominantly Latino fighters. And then he'd fight on these Mexican holidays. And people were tuning in their millions in the hope that he got beat. And of course he never did, so fans would go home disappointed. Mayweather didn't have a track record of delivering exciting performances at welterweight. In the low weight classes he did, but at welterweight he didn't have a reputation for delivering exciting performances. So people weren't tuning in for that. They were tuning in, hoping and praying that somebody could finally take his undefeated record off him. And that was the majority of people that would tune into his fights. And so what you had then was anticlimax after anticlimax after anticlimax after anticlimax for the majority of boxing fans. And then Mayweather would taunt them again on the next merry-go-round. Extortionate ticket prices and all this stuff. Fans, basically, long story short, were being exploited. They were being rinsed during the Mayweather years. And I don't think we need a return to that. What we need a return to is the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, where boxing was a mainstream sport in the United States. And it can't become that again with extortionate ticket prices. That's when boxing was at its strongest in those decades in the United States. Under Floyd Mayweather, during his reign, his era, it became a niche sport because of how exploitative the business practices were. Exploitative of the fans, right? So yeah, I certainly hope these ticket prices can come down. But that is contingent on these shows making money. People signing up for subscriptions. Because at the end of the day, the organizers of these events don't want to lose money. On many occasions they do, of course, but they try to keep the losses at a minimum. They try and recoup as much of it as they can. If loads and loads and loads, millions more people sign up for, let's say, DAZN, the broadcaster and the Saudis and everybody involved in financing the shows will then be in a position to have cheaper ticket prices and still make a handsome profit. But they need the numbers, they need the subscriptions, or even the pay-per-view sales, right? Anyway, give me your thoughts in the comment section below about the reaction to this August 3rd card by fans in America. Some people in America love the card, but a lot of people don't. Leave me your thoughts below. And before I go, I just want to tell you about this week's non-boxing content. I uploaded this video, it's about an hour and a half long, where I'm covering several different topics. I analyzed the incident with the Donald the other day. You guys know what I'm talking about. I talk about the female screw who was screwing around with an inmate, literally. I also talk about the manosphere, the changing demographics of the UK and the backlash against it, the anti-UK tourist protests in Spain and how they came about, and a few other topics as well. If you want to access this content, as well as hundreds of other exclusive podcasts and videos, as well as our members chat, just head on over to my Patreon page and select the tier called the Brotherhood of Reason. There's no contract, no commitment. You can cancel at any time, just like Netflix, but it's a hell of a lot cheaper. Just download the app from the Play Store or the App Store. All the links are in the description box below.